What are the four realms of existence? What is the new theory of being human?
Well, it's not some Eastern mystical thing, as a lot of people expected it to be.
Yeah.
It's a pretty boring set of four things. That the basic idea is that all the organisms that have ever lived are biological organisms. That goes, if it's alive, it's biological. If it's not alive, it's not biological. So some biological organisms developed a nervous system, and that happens to only happen in mammals. In animals. So only animals have a nervous system. All other organisms alive are biological, but not neurobiological. So neurobiological is the second realm. And then the third realm is that some of these organisms with nervous systems have cognition. They're able to think and plan and make decisions on the basis of information in the head rather than information necessarily just in the world. So that, it's very easy to say which organisms which things in the world are biological. If it's alive, it's biological. It's very easy to say which animals or which organisms are neurobiological. If it has a nervous system, it's neurobiological. But when it comes to the next two realms, the cognitive being the next one, then we have a problem because there's no functional structural marker that tells you this is a cognitive creature. Yeah. You have to do rigorous tests behavioral tests to try and pin it down. So the rigorous tests that have been done have, I think, pretty conclusively told us that humans, or mammals and birds, are cognitive creatures. It's hard to say in other vertebrates, like reptiles. It's a little more difficult to say whether they are or not. I mean, it doesn't seem that they have the same thing that mammals and birds have. And when you get into invertebrates, again, it doesn't seem they have exactly the same thing. Maybe they have their own version of it. But if we're looking at this from the evolutionary point of view, it basically started with mammals as one path, and in birds through another path, through reptiles that other reptiles didn't develop. And not even all birds have developed this. Only some birds, like shrub jays, it's like corvids, they're called. Yeah. And so these capacities happened in parallel, not in sequence. There's not an ancestor that gave rise to cognition in birds and mammals. Okay. So that we have to develop tests, and there have been some very good tests that tell you a behavior that is not cognitive is a habit. So a habit is something that you've learned. It's become routinized so much that in the presence of the stimulus, the behavior is performed. There's no intermediating cognition, thought, plan, action, decision in the performance of that habit. It's just a stimulus-response connection. So the distinction that we want to make here is between habits and goal-directed behaviors, behaviors in which you have to plan and make decisions to achieve the goal. The goal doesn't just come to you as a reinforcer habitually. You have to make it happen by having a plan that can conclude an action that is useful to you. So that's the main difference that we can draw, that the thing that birds and mammals can do and other creatures are not as good as, or maybe not even capable of. Mm-hmm. So that takes us to the fourth realm, which is the conscious realm. And again, we have no physical marker that tells us, what consciousness is and which animals have it. And it's even more difficult to know which animals, even amongst mammals and birds, or even if we take those two as like the canonical examples, we don't know if any other mammal has consciousness or if any birds have it. The way I like to think about it is that consciousness depends on cognition, and the cognition takes you to the finishing line. And that means that we can study things like, episodic memory and semantic memory in other animals. We call it episodic-like rather than actual episodic, because we don't know that the animal has the internal representation and the conscious experience. You can use cognition as a guide, because what it does is it takes us all the way to the finishing line where consciousness can occur. But we don't know if other animals cross the finishing line. But it's pretty good to even be able to say that these are markers that we can see how they get to the finishing line. And, this is a way to think about, do these other creatures like, bees and flies and so forth, do they even get to the finishing line? Or are they, somewhere else?
Yeah.
So that's why I like that particular distinction. So in terms of human consciousness, I mean, there's so much debate in the field and so much we could talk about. But I'll tell you my particular position on that if you like.